Hi everyone, Magnus here, and in today's video we're going to be looking at pawn races and king activity. And once again, I've returned to my friend Dvoretsky's endgame manual to look for some nice exercises which we will be completing today, starting with some simple concepts and ideas that you need to know, and onto some more challenging and really nice puzzles. Before we get started, if you have any other ideas that you would like me to cover in this endgame series, please let me know in the comments and I'll be sure to cover them. Okay, so starting off, we have this first position, which is just here to introduce something called the rule of the square. And the idea behind the rule of the square is sort of just like simple geometry, but the point is that if this position is white to move, then white is winning, and if it's black to move, then it is a draw. And I will illustrate this by drawing out something which is we call the rule of the square, which you can very quickly find just by drawing a diagonal all the way down from the pawn to the back rank where the promotion of the pawn will happen. And if you draw this square here and the king is able to get into the box on your move, so say it was black to move, black would move into the box and black would be able to stop the pawn. But because it is white to move in this position, you can play pawn to b4, which means that there is now a new square that can be drawn here. And as you can see, on black's turn, black is unable to get into the square. So black can go here, but white would just promote. And as you can see, black is one move too short, and will lose the game. But let's say that it was black to move. Let's say I move the king over. Black can simply move the king here. Black can move the king here or here, by the way, because as you can see by how the square is drawn, any of these outer squares get the draw done. So even though it might seem intuitive that you are moving closer towards the back rank like this, moving here and then here is actually the same distance in terms of catching the pawn. So you can in fact move here and then just start heading back, and you will catch the pawn with one tempi to spare. Okay, so let's move on to a nice puzzle which will illustrate this point that I want to get across, which is that the king needs a free line to run all the way to the corner if you want to catch the pawn. Okay, so I'm going to give you a couple minutes or a couple seconds, as long as you want, to pause the video and try and come up with an idea for white. I'll give you a couple seconds. Okay, so the move here is actually not pawn to a4, as a lot of people might be thinking, because obviously pawn a3 is no good because the king is already in the square. But at the same time, with pawn to a4, we draw our little square here, just like this, and you can see that the king can in fact join the square, and the king will stop the pawn, just like this. However, if we go all the way back, and you might notice that the king requires this line of path to be free, and the king would say, if the king had to go here, and then here, and then here, and then here, and then here, as its path, that would actually not be able to catch the pawn, because we can just count out the moves 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and that is the same rather than 1, 2, 3, and 4. So it looks like sacrificing this pawn can gain white a crucial tempo, and after you take, because you have to take, you cannot, otherwise this pawn will run and become a passed pawn and promote. And if you don't, if you take, then pawn to a4 will come, and the king has its straight line back blocked, and it will have to go cumbersome around its own pawn. The king is very clumsy, and the white pawn will, doesn't really matter where the black king goes, but the white pawn will make it and become a queen. So that is a nice little introduction to blocking these king races all the way back. Okay. So now this exercise is actually more of a zugzwang kind of position. And the idea behind this one is that is white to move and white to win. And the point is that both sides sort of have like a bit of a mutual stalemate, but the difference here is that white actually has waiting moves and black does not have any waiting moves. Now, what I mean here is that if black is to move their king away, then the white pawn will start moving, and the black king would have to leave the square here and would not be able to get back as it is blocked by its own pawn. Let's say the black pawn wasn't there. This would actually not be a problem because the black king would be able to move all the way back and get to safety. So it is because of this black pawn blocking the king from entering the square that actually white is winning with a waiting move, because these two pawns, white can simply move back and forth, whereas eventually black will have to move the king away somewhere. All of these squares, all of these options, are outside of the crucial square, as you can see that I've just drawn, and for that reason, white will win the game with the move king to h3. Black has no choice but to give up all of their pawns and move the king, very sadly, away, and white will make a queen, and then win the game. Alright, this puzzle is a little bit more challenging, but it's the same kind of theme, same kind of ideas as the last two. It's all about trying to block the king's retreat squares, and then get your passed pawn rolling. So for that reason, if you said pawn to a4, that would unfortunately be a losing mistake. Not just a mistake, but a losing mistake. And the reason for that is after we get en passant, actually you can I think en passant still wins, but actually most accurate is the move king to g3. And the reason is because after a5, even though you win the pawn race, sorry, black actually checkmates the white king, as you can see here, with the pawns, with the king covering the pawns here as well. So that'd be very, very nasty. I do believe that taking en passant is still winning. Let's just see. Yes, taking en passant is still a win, of course, because you will promote this pawn, and if they want to take here, then it's the same idea with king to g3. Okay, but let's say that you go pawn to so the pawn to a4 clearly doesn't work. That is no good. But hold on a minute. Why wouldn't you just take this pawn? Like, the king is miles away from the white pawn here, right? So surely we get a situation like this. And how is the king ever getting in that square? Now, actually, the thing here is that... wait, firstly, it's black to move. And secondly, there is en passant. So you might be looking at this like, okay, black's clearly not getting into the square. Like, what's going on here? So black is moving back, and it turns out that black actually does have a path all the way back here to try and stop the white pawn from promoting. But white goes pawn to a4, saying you're not in the square, and I'm going to win. But then black actually can take en passant, which actually resets the square all the way back to here, which now black can jump into, make the draw with this route all the way over to here to stop the pawn. So we get this, and also this is crucial. Don't go grabbing pawns that aren't necessary. If black were to take this pawn on f5, black would lose, because now black hasn't got a clear path back around here, which is the quickest possible route. So you'll now see that actually black would be one tempo short, and white would promote with checkmate actually. So we have to go back here. Black should not get greedy and take the pawn. Black needs to conserve moves and run as quickly as possible all the way back around, catch the pawn, collect the pawn, and actually black might be winning here. I think black probably is winning. Yes, black wins because they are up a pawn, and white doesn't have any way to infiltrate because these two pawns will simply barricade the white king out. Eventually, the black king will come back, start winning all these pawns, distract the king with the queen. I can show it if you want. Something like this here, something like this. And if black starts moving over here, black can start to sacrifice this h pawn, which white has to go back and get. But black will simply start collecting all the pawns and make a queen. Okay, so that's why, to solve this puzzle, you have to notice that the only path for black is to go all the way back here, not there, but end up on this b7 square, and then black can win the game. But white has this great move, pawn to f6, which saves everything. And after the pawn has to take on f6, because if you don't take, I will take you, and then I will make a queen. And if you just push past me, I will push past you. So black has to take, from which white can now draw the game with king takes g2. Once again, a4 would actually be a big blunder, because black can take, and then go king g3 once again, and we will get the same pawn race situation where white queens first, but black queens second with check. Well, doesn't queen, but black delivers a checkmate. So for that reason, after pawn to f6, you get pawn takes, king takes, and after, say, king to g5, we can have pawn to a4, takes, and let's say pawn to f5, push here, something like this. Wait, I might have mixed something up actually. Give me a second. After pawn to f6, we get takes. Actually, this might be actually this is a winning position for white. Sorry, so there's nothing wrong with what happened. The point is that the king can't get back to this b7 square, and because the path is blocked by black's own pawn. So as you can see by what I just showed, black would have to get this pawn out of the way, but it's way too slow, and black will not get back to the queening square in time. Okay, now we're moving on from the idea of these, well, the idea of blocking these pawn races with pawn sacrifices to try and disrupt the coordination of the king. And we're moving on to a second idea in pawn races, which was Reti's idea. And a lot of you have probably seen this before, but the point is, how can white, given that white is 2 squares behind the black pawn, manage to stop this pawn from queening? Now, it seems very, very clear that white is not in the square and will never be in the square. Let's say that like white was over here, for example, at least white would have some hope of getting back. But actually, white can manage to stop this pawn all the way from behind, just like this. And white can do that, not by pushing their pawn, because if white were to push, then black would go here, and then simply promote after catching the pawn. But white can actually do this with the move king g7. And if black simply starts trying to push their pawn, white will go king to f6. And the point is that white uses a dual threat of going this way and helping their own pawn promote, as well as going this way and then catching the black pawn. So if black were to keep pushing, white can go here, and then start to push. Black has to go stop, and then we will get simultaneous promotion, just like this. White promotes with check, but this is a simple draw. Eventually the queens will get traded, and players make a draw. However, equally, if let's say black tries to go here and stop the pawn, white can go here. Now getting ever closer to the pawn, we're now just about to get in for here and get into the square, as you can see that I've just drawn. And if black were to take the pawn, white gets into the square easily and stops the pawn. But let's say that black starts to push again. Well, now the black king can actually divert back to the original plan of pushing, and we will transpose back into the previous line, just like this, where there was simultaneous promotion, as black has nothing better to do than either to make a queen and allow this queen as well, and we would end up with something like this, and a peaceful draw. Okay, this is now another application of Reti's idea. This one is really, really nice. I couldn't get this one at first, but took me a while. But this one is definitely a cool application of the idea. So the position is white to move and white to make the draw. Let's have a think. Okay, so the obvious move, pawn to a6, trying to promote your passed pawn, doesn't work because black will get over here and catch the pawn in time. And equally, if white starts to try and come over and help the pawn, white is unable, white will lose the pawn, and then white will not manage to get into the square and will lose the pawn race. So what else can white do? It seems much more intuitive that white should go towards the pawn, as that is where the pawn is queening, and this is the direction of the square. So if you want to get into the square, it seems like this is the easiest way to do it. However, as you can see, it's actually just as useful to be over here on the square, because the distance from here to here for, oops, I accidentally deleted that. Let's just redraw the square. And what I'm trying to point out is that the distance, once you get into this part over here, the distance from there to there is actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And equally, the distance, if you were to go from here to here to here to here to here to here, is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it makes no difference if you are to go here and then here, or here and then here. Both are actually the same distance, even though this one looks like it's getting much closer to the pawn. So you can in fact run away from the pawn's direction and still be getting closer to it. As strange as it may look, both of these moves get equally close to this pawn when it's on its race. Okay, so if we go king to e8, the pawn will simply push here, black gets back in time, white can't stop the pawn. So white needs to once again use the threat of promotion with this move king to c8, and let's say that they just start to push. White would actually win the game here, like this, as white would queen and easily get back and stop the black pawn. And for that reason, black has to go for king to c6, and try and stop the pawn from moving, because if the pawn were to move just like this, then black would get back in time and capture the pawn, as white can't go back and defend it. So white has to once again play king to b8, and if the pawn were to go to a6, if black were to start pushing the pawn would go to a6 and make a queen, and once again get back. So black has to play the move king to b5, stopping going after this pawn. But now white can play king to b7, and not king to c7, by the way. If white were to play king to c7, black is under no obligation to take this pawn, given that the pawn is not threatening to push forward. Black would start to move, and white would not be able to get into the square in time, and as they don't have this threat of promotion, because this pawn push can be captured. And for that reason, white has to play the move king to b7, and then white is threatening to promote the pawn. So, for example, if black were to start pushing, white is threatening to make the pawn push, just like this. We would have queen here, and then the king can move and stop the promotion. So, black has no choice but to take the pawn, from which white can now start to run, and white miraculously makes it inside the square and is able to catch the pawn just in the nick of time. I just think this is a really, really nice exercise. It just shows how actually what ends up being the best path is combining the threat of the promotion. You go here, 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 and then make an entire diagonal run, and this is the best path for the white king. So I just think that's a really nice puzzle. And one final one, we have an application of this to a king and pawn endgame, but black also has the bishop, and it's the same kind of idea. Okay, so at first your thoughts might be king to e6. This was initially my first idea, but I quickly discarded it after the move king to e4, which comes with the threat of bishop to f5 and stopping promotion. Point being that if there is a promotion, black will simply get back, and if you try and harass these two pieces, black will give up the bishop and push the pawn, make a queen. So for that reason, if once again, like if white tries to make a queen, you'll get a check and win the queen. But white has this. Oh, also, like let's just look at some other moves first. If the king moves here, same exact idea, we'll get this. And you might think that you can get back in time, but black will get a setup with the bishop and the pawn, just like this. And you can never actually get back to stop this, because as soon as white would start to run behind, black can simply move away, and if this pawn promotion happens, we get the same kind of position where b5 is executed. But white does have this miracle save, king to c8, which seems like a completely insane move. You're blocking the pawn's promotion, and you're allowing the black pawn to run. In fact, you're forcing the black pawn to run. But once the black pawn starts running, you can now move your king up here, back to d7, and if black gives the check, like this, what happens is that you actually have the move king to d6, which is another just fantastic move. You don't move towards the pawn. If you move towards the pawn will push and make it away. However, you move up to d6, and if the pawn starts to push, you use the bishop as a weakness, and use the bishop to gain one tempi, getting back into the square. As you can see here, this is the square. You use the bishop, because if they just start to push, you will take the bishop, and you are threatening to promote the pawn. And so if they were to move the bishop somewhere, let's say that, or they can defend with the king, I think this makes the most sense. So they defend with the king, say, white gets back to the pawn in time. Let's say that black pushes, and white goes to c3. Black might try and defend the pawn, but then you use this final deflection tactic of promoting to a queen, getting the pawn, and white makes the draw. Absolute miracle save for white. I thought this was a really nice puzzle to end on. I hope you enjoyed some of these introductions to endgame concepts, the square, and Reti's idea with pawn races and king activity. So yeah, hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any other ideas that you'd like me to cover in future endgame videos, please let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing as well. And otherwise, I will see you next time. Bye!